Gromcast! Gromcast! Gromcast!
Hey folks, we are back again for another episode of Gromcast. Episode 8 is brought to you by bike.com, b1ke.com. If you need trails built, if you need some expert skills coaching, or if you want to come and visit some of the best bike parks in the south of England, b1ke.com is where you need to be heading. It's pretty good at the moment. Obviously, I'm at Rogate. The vibes there are all time right now. Spring has finally sprung. Dusty trails, sunshine, vibes are all time at the moment. I'm absolutely loving it. The World Cup is now weeks away. We've got the first round of the downhill kicking off at Lindisfarne on the 9th of June. And you're going to be seeing something new on the helmets of some of the races. In fact, quite a few of the races, at least 40 of the downhill guys across the men and the women, are going to be using the HIT impact sensor. So this episode, I'm super stoked to bring you a chat with Nick from HIT. HIT, they are right at the forefront of technology dealing with concussion, genuine feedback for racers, teams, and medical research alike. Really stoked to bring you this one. Really interesting topic. Without further ado, Nick from HIT. Here we go. Okay, so here we are then, folks, for another episode of Gromcast, and I am really excited today because I have got Nick from HIT, and we're going to be talking about all things concussion-related and how HIT, certainly I feel like they're at the forefront of dealing with it, attitudes towards it, and how to make things a lot better for riders, certainly in the mountain bike world and further afield. So yeah, hi Nick.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me, Mark.
You're more than welcome.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, good stuff. So, what's your background then, Nick? How did all this come to fruition?
Yeah, so basically, Ewan's the founder of HIT, Head Impact Trauma, and we played rugby together. And then I'm slightly older than him, so I became his coach at the end. And during his time at university, he was involved with Harriet Watt in the incubator there and came up with this idea basically around the mismanagement of concussion, especially in rugby. And both himself and I had been witness to that. Myself, I've been on the receiving end of quite a few bad concussions. I don't really want to dive too deep into that, but yeah, it's an issue that we previously never really had the function to validate that someone had a concussion or how bad that concussion perhaps was. And this device is a starting point. It's only the very first step that we're taking to try and validate with a number so that there's a clear indication for the athlete or the coach to remove that player from play and then to be able to manage that effectively.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think from my point of view, it's just your average Joe mountain biker. The biggest issue with concussion is that, yeah, someone's got one, but how bad it is or how far on the scale of severity, you don't really have any idea. I mean, even in the last month, just working at Rogate, I've had a handful of concussions from minor to not the worst, but fairly serious. And they're always kind of my least favourite ones to deal with because people always are a bit different in how they deal with it. They're either very spaced out. Some people get a little bit aggressive when the body's trying to figure out what they're doing. Yeah, kind of one of the scarier aspects of injuries.
Yeah, I mean, it's across all sports, and like we were talking earlier, it's amazing that the younger athletes and athletes now are taking this more seriously. There is a wide spectrum of how each person reacts to a head impact, and measuring a G-force measurement and giving you a threshold will ultimately help young riders. Okay, am I safe to carry on? Am I not safe? Should I notify someone? Our device, hopefully, you'll get a notification in the times where there's a very serious accident. Your emergency contacts will be notified. So that sort of takes it out of play that, say, if I'm a young athlete, my parents know I'm out mountain biking, maybe solo, I have a crash, then an emergency ping will be sent to my parents, and they'll know exactly where I am, and then if there's been a head impact recorded in terms of how hard that is, so they can make an immediate decision on what to do, and that could be driving out and picking that person up, or it could be notifying sort of emergency mountain rescue or something like that. So there's a full range of what happens to the brain during those times. And I guess where we started, we moved a little bit away from contact sports just now, and we've found real value in helping cycling and mountain biking at the moment. So it's really cool to help them grow as a sport and make it safer for all athletes.
No, that's good. I mean, certainly from let's try to think of specific examples. Obviously, Reece Wilson, he big, world champion from a couple of years back. He had a pretty bad concussion. Took a quite while to come back from it. Tiny Seagrave, another example. And the difference is now is people are being a lot more open with their story of coming back to racing and the various struggles, which I think has really opened the doors to changing people's attitudes on it. Because I started biking way back in the mid 90s, and you'd hear the tales or read them in the magazines. Of, oh yeah, someone got sparked out in qualifying, but they just stuck a lid on and laid down a finals run or whatever. And at the time, it was like, yeah, gung ho, mountain biking extreme, blah blah blah. But now there's so much more awareness around it, and certainly my understanding of one of the issues with concussion is if you've had a bad concussion but you feel all right, if you then get a second hit, potentially because you're not fully cognitively there, but you can't make the decision because the thing that makes the decisions has had a wallop. If you then get a second hit within that time frame, you're then potentially putting yourself at risk of some really potentially severe long-term issues.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you've nailed it really there. While it's rare, there's a secondary impact syndrome that can happen, and it can actually be fatal. But the impairment at that point where you've had a head impact as you're coming down the hill, it's exponential what the risk is for the rider further down. While they might feel right and they could probably get through the run, some of these guys are amazing. It's not just about the professional, it's also the younger guys, the younger girls, the girls that have to do the same jumps as the guys, and that adoption from the professional athlete or the semi-professional guys is amazing. It does happen to them. It does happen to us. So the cool thing with what's happening with HIT at the moment is we're forming what's called the HIT squad. So we've got 40 of the world's best riders, which are all coming together as part of the HIT squad, and they'll all be wearing the devices at Lenzerheide. So with a bit of luck, everyone will see the devices on the back of their helmets, which is really cool thing.
Yeah, that is good. Obviously, from your point of view, it's a good thing. Like getting your product in at the top end of the sport. That's a lot of people. I didn't realise you got that many people involved. Obviously, I know Luke Williamson because obviously he's local to Reigate with the 555 team, and also know you guys have worked with them already. What other names have you got? I know you got Reece Wilson, I think, is already on board.
Yeah, so Reece has been an ambassador from the start. He's Scottish as well, which fits I'm Kiwi, but the company's Scottish. He's been a huge supporter of ours, as well as his agent, Paul, at Net Performance. We've had a lot of work with the Brain Collective just the other weekend. They're up at Fort William, and we're doing QEGs for a lot of the riders. So a lot of the guys have had a head impact themselves. So if they haven't yet, they're well aware of the risks and perhaps leaving something about their legacy and helping the sport be safer around head injuries. So that's really cool. I'm excited to work with them all.
Yeah, it's good to have that from obviously your point of view. It's really good to have that level of support at that end of the sport, and there's a lot of obviously if you're aware of, I'm not sure how aware of the changes with the World Cup coverage and the whole format of the World Cup racing's changed a bit this year with Discovery and ESO and whatnot. And part of that has been a lot of the riders trying to give themselves a bit more of a voice in course safety and all that side of it. And it feels like this also sits quite nicely as part of that. So in terms, I think riders are a lot more aware of their own value to their sponsors, and part of that is keeping themselves safe as best they can.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah,
mean that we're in a device where obviously we're taking a lot of data from it, and a lot of the riders will be not just professional but amateur, will be along the same lines, same courses, same trails, and over time we'll get a idea of where the hot spots on each trail is, where the accidents are happening. Specifically around course design, the riders will then be able to say, "Hey, this is where the hot spots are, and this is where the majority of head injuries are happening. We need to alter this course design." So that's really, really cool. There's loads of stuff that we can do in the background, and giving the power back to the athletes is amazing.
yeah. I think downhill specifically, well, even in enduro, they're quite unique in. Actually, not that unique. They're just bloody dangerous. I think is probably at times is the long and the short of it. And I think in some ways, hit in some ways in that way is probably more use to like the non-professional athletes, or not necessarily just the World Cup riders, because I think it puts from what I get, it can put a very definite marker on what's happened as to something before that was all a bit of a vagary, and there was no kind of you had nothing to really to work with. So I think for the average Joe, it ticks boxes that you wouldn't have even known you had to tick before, just in terms of keeping yourself safe and aftercare and recovery and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Like the riders today, the men and the women, they're amazing athletes. Most of them are doing weights, proper recovery. They're measuring everything. They're wearing heart rate monitors and watches, and they're measuring everything, but they're not measuring uh, probably the one asset that they have, which is their brain. And you know, that's where the mountain bikers is that, okay, this is the last piece of kit that I need. I've only got one brain. It doesn't heal like a broken arm or a broken collarbone or,
Mm.
a cut hand from going through a spoke or something. They know at one point, even though it's not sexy to talk about it, at one point they might make a small error and there might be a crash. It's like an insurance policy almost, to help them in the short term and the long term.
Yeah, I think just from the recovery stories you see from various athletes, obviously I know from speaking to Luke, he had a big one out in Chonpri last year. And we did joke at the time, I was like, what happened then? He's like, well, the main issue with concussion crashes is you can't remember what happened in some cases. So that even then it can be quite hard to quantify what you should be doing. I think there's now, it feels like there's more of a shift in like, oh, I've had a big one. I should be having at least X amount of weeks off the bike. Certainly from guys like Luke who race professionally, there seems to be a lot less pressure from sponsors like there used to be to just kind of crack on and do it. And I think attitudes towards it and where hit really help, again, it's going back to keeping riders safe rather than just basically being made to feel like they're just a paid billboard just to rocket someone's bike down the hill and that's it. I think it feels like everything's moving in the right direction to really be looking after the riders. And if the worst does happen, you've then got some actual like metrics to work with and say, yeah, this is what your brain's actually just taken. Now the medical people can say, well, if this has happened, you need to be doing at least X, Y, Z to get back to where you need to be.
Yeah, for sure. Like that would give you the peace of mind that you know how hard it's been. And within the companion app, we're building a concussion symptom checker. So
Mhm.
there'll be this validation okay, has it been really, really hard, or am I just thinking that? Then the sponsors will know exactly where you were. Your coaches, team members, parents will know exactly where you were, so then they can make a really, really informed decision about your recovery, showing accumulative load and things on the brain will help you recover faster, but also, not give you that damage sort of further down the line. It's definitely going to give sponsors that number that they need. Okay, well, he's had a G-force impact of 40, 50 Gs, and he's suffering concussion symptoms. And then as we slowly bring him back through a gradual return to riding, which we hope to build into the app as well, a personalized view for him, and then he'll be able to go through those steps one by one to, mitigate the risk of jumping back on a bike and having another head injury in pretty quick succession.
Yeah, it's avoiding that chance of it happening again and causing more issues. So obviously you just talked about the companion app. Obviously, so currently, how is the product working at the moment? Obviously, you've got the hit sensor and you've got some form of app that goes with it at the moment.
Yeah. So the device itself, we started with our first product, which was Hit Impact, and that went really, really well. We learned a lot from the people that used it and brought it and still use it today. And we've developed the product into what's called Hit Plus, and that incorporates a few more features, for example, GPS. So that will give us the ability to add in crash detection. You've got your times, line, speed. So not only do you have a G-force measurement, you've got velocity as well. So there's a greater picture and a greater piece of data that we can use to analyze. And then obviously all of that's recorded within the companion app. So you'll be building, we've got a few names for it, a cognitive passport or a concussion bank, or a head impact bank. And over time, you'll be able to manage the load on the brain. You'll be able to know, okay, I had a confirmed concussion from a medical practitioner after a G-force impact of this, and then you'll be able to alter the thresholds based on your own personal symptoms and what happens to the brain for you personally. So there's loads of applications. The companion app stores it all for you. We just see it not as your name, but it's all privacy protected. And with that data, we'll be able to work with guys like Professor Angus Hunter and Dr. Howard Hurst, and those sort of professionals in the head injury space will be able to analyze that data. We'll then have a more effective tool to diagnose a concussion. With the emergence of AI and machine learning, who knows what we can do with it? Perhaps we can declutter the A&E awards and things and actually give better care.
Yeah, it's interesting that, because obviously there are dedicated medical professionals and experts in the field of head injuries. Obviously you just mentioned those names who are completely new to me. How much interaction and interest, I suppose, from the medical community have you had for sort of any research going forward and how it might be used in generally helping looking into head injuries and dealing with them?
Yeah, so Dr. Howard Hurst and Professor Angus Hunter were two pivotal guys that basically helped us start. Both of them, I believe, are running their own testing. We've had an order from a US research company. They've ordered 180 devices to run a 6-month project. So there's validation from the research community of what we're trying to do, and they're really, really excited about the possibilities. While there's a commercial element for us, there's huge learning for them, and we're excited to use that knowledge that we gain, not from just the professional guys, but right through every athlete, every young child, age groups, different, genders. There's loads that we can do in understanding more about head impacts.
Yeah, it feels like hit. I'm not quite sure what's happened first, whether it was the attitude shifting, certainly in mountain biking, towards concussion, or things like hit appearing and some high profile kind of concussion cases. But it all feels like everything's kind of sort of stars have aligned. Things are all kind of lined up at the moment, and it feels like you guys are kind of right at the front edge of improving it for everyone, getting more information on board for everyone, helping the medical guys gather more information, which is then going to obviously dovetail back into supporting athletes down the line. It feels like quite an exciting kind of time at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're pioneering for sure with the Hit Squad, especially, and we've partnered with the Brain Collective, so they're a English based out of Harrogate company, and they have agreed to do baseline testing. So with a QEEG, so there's no hiding from a QEEG, which shows different frequencies of the brain where you've had an impact before and where that part of the brain might be recovering. Like I'm not the expert here, so if you want to find out more information, check out Brain Collective.
I'll stick some links in the show description for that one.
Yeah, they've been helping our riders establish a firm baseline, and then our device has come in as a symptom checker and indicator, and then together we're working on the graduated return to play. So, we've already scanned 22 riders, and we're hoping to get the rest done out in Lenzerheide itself. So,
nice.
yeah, we're definitely pioneering. We're at the front. So it is exciting, especially from myself. I've definitely had a large number of concussions, probably mostly unreported. But if I can genuinely help one person in this, then I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, certainly from my point of view, I make no bones about I've got issues with mental health and depression and blah blah blah. There are obviously certainly a few high profile cases, certainly some of the big name BMXers where they've had repeated concussions over the years, which has then led on to, in some cases, suicides and all the rest of it, basically from CTE and all the rest of it. I'm guessing that with I'm going to call it the QEEG because I can't remember all the letters to get the acronym right, but that's basically the cap, isn't it? That's measuring like all the activity in the brain. So that is, I'm guessing that's going to make like that's recording like your baseline settings of when your brain is normal, cognitive, everything's where it should be. When it's, I guess so the information from the hit sensor in the event of a big hit. How does that kind of work together with how can the hit information tell you what they need to know with getting to how bad they are? I guess I'm wording this terribly.
So not everyone needs a QEEG. So that's like the next level. That's like the Rolls Royce or the top of the line for brain care, and it's just a really nice thing for us to be able to give back to the Hit Squad riders, and they'll have a greater understanding around what their specific brain is doing, and we'll be able to combine that with their data. But that gives you a baseline where you've been after the indication, at what threshold did that trigger a decline in frequency or brain function. And then throughout the season after, say, if the unfortunate event that one of them do crash and have a significant head impact, then they'll be able to redo that baseline test and see where they are. That's like next level stuff. Whereas the majority of our users go out on the weekend. They might be riding by themselves or riding by with a friend, and they have a genuine crash, go over the handlebars, or they just make one small mistake, and then they've got an indication of, okay, how severe actually was it? Because only 10% of concussions have a loss of consciousness, and it's the ones that we think are not that serious, which actually, sometimes have a huge impact on the brain, and sometimes it doesn't actually appear immediately, and it can be, 2, 3, 4 hours later we appear with a delayed concussion. That sort of thing's not nice at all. But say if you had that indication early, you'd be able to go to seek medical help or react accordingly by walking down or getting a friend to help you out off the trail.
Yeah, rather than trying to, I think, sort of attitudes previously would just be like, yeah, I'll just get off to the van and get himself out of here, I'll be fine. Whereas I think that gives it a definite, no, that was a proper hit. And even if you, like you said, some of the problems with concussion is you can have a wallop and from your point of view might be okay. And then it's only several hours down the line where you actually do start feeling genuinely awful. I think it takes the guesswork out. I think there's so much that you just can't see with a concussion. And I've had riders said to me, some people have had a minor tumble at the weekend. It's like, oh yeah, I'll smack my lid, but I feel all right, and I'm going home anyway. I'll see them a couple of weeks later, and they'll be like, oh yeah, the day after that Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, I was awful. It's like, yeah, there you go. That's exactly what we're talking about. And I think people just being a bit more aware, and I think less of the sort of testosterone fueled, yeah, I'll be fine, take the hit and get on with it. That seems to gradually, that attitude, thankfully, is just kind of going. People are sort of starting to look after themselves a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. There's always going to be those riders that are not worried about that at all, and that's fine. And we're not trying to stop anyone from doing any sport. We're actually trying to get more people into sport and help grow mountain biking and cycling and things like this. So, the aspect where if you do get a hit and then you just go about normally, and there's things that we do to, help you recover faster. So they say, I could be really wrong here, but some of the research around using screens after head injuries is not very good for your brain. So it actually doesn't help you recover. So, if you've had a head impact and you're aware of it and the threshold's significant enough, then that might be enough to say, okay, well, I'll limit the amount of screen time. I might not go to work on the Monday if I'm suffering from headaches. Sitting in front of a computer all day might not be the best thing for your brain. It could be then going, say, on a gym class on a Monday, and you go to your regular high intensity training session, and halfway through you're dizzy, you're suffering, maybe you drop a weight, there's a risk of injuring yourself further. So there's, like I said, this is just the first step that we're taking, and we're a long way from solving the problem, but at least we're giving that early indication, for sure.
Yeah. So I suppose in terms of kind of overall kind of arc, it feels like we've got the hit sensor, and you kind of started off with the initial idea of this is measuring how much of a wallop your head's had. Bits to say how to information from that, which then helps the recovery stage. But it feels like going forward, there's still, it's an open book really for what this can potentially lead to. Certainly with involvement with the medical professionals and actually working with the athletes and racers and stuff. It feels like this is literally just the start. When did this actually all start? Like when was the light bulb moment?
Yeah, Ewan started developing the product in 2018. So in our journey, we're still very, very early. So while there's a lot of research around G-force impact, so that's your blunt force impact, there's not a lot of research around a rotational force. So that's when you've got, say, a rugby player swings you around and you're jolted without actually having a
Hmm.
direct impact, or you're coming down the hill and you're flowing off the bike on a sideways angle.
Yeah.
And similar to, you might watch Reese's Flying Scotsman video.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like a huge whack to his head, but when you see his neck and his head
Yeah. The
come down,
arc
and
and the. Mm,
yeah, that's what we refer to as rotational force. So within inside the brain, or inside the skull, the brain it's like a shearing effect with the brain, so it's twisting rather than a jolt. So while there's not a lot of research around that, this will help aid that research.
mm,
So yeah, there's still a lot of unknowns. We've got further applications in terms of, instead of having an external device building into the goggles
hmm.
for a rider, or into the helmet itself, which will
Yep.
also have an impact on helmet manufacturing, making better helmets. So yeah, we're just really, really early in the process.
Yeah.
And the
Because
first
I'm
step
just.
is, sorry, you go.
No, I was going to say, obviously, my head's sitting here pinging, thinking that it's the doors open there to be actually working a lot more closely with a lot of the big manufacturers of the helmets. You know, your Foxes, your Troy Lees, your 60, your POC, because a lot of those, some of those brands, I certainly know 60 and POC, they seem very research heavy, even in their marketing kind of approach. They're sort of saying this isn't just a helmet because it looks cool. This is a helmet that's got a lot of stuff going on behind it. So I imagine companies like that are probably going to be, if they're not already, are going to be very interested in what that can do. Because we've already got things like MIPS, like the rotational system, and various versions of. Um, my I've my full face at the moment. I've got the first generation of the Fox Rampage Pro Carbon, and that actually had the fluid inside system. So instead of having like the MIPS plastic shear plate, it's like these little kind of sort of gel bubbles that basically do the same thing, just in a different way. Since that's now a couple of years old, and they've now replaced it with MIPS, which is either telling me that either there is an easier corporate kind of cash-in deal, being slightly cynical there, or they felt that MIPS was actually a better safer than what they're doing before. So I'm assuming that the information that you guys can now potentially provide people in actual impacts and when it's actually happening, real world situations, as opposed to just slamming a helmet into a stick in a laboratory, it's going to be a lot more beneficial to manufacturers to make ultimately stuff that's safer, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like the guys at 60 have been super supportive with to us, and especially our riders that we work with. We've had loads of communication with other brands as well, and potentially incorporating our device within the helmet. So almost like a smart helmet. So
Mm-hmm.
the technology, while we've started with an external device, you might see it change rapidly. I think that's the benefit of trying to innovate and using technology. This is what technology should be used for, is solving a pretty big problem.
Mm.
And if we can get it into a helmet and work with some of the big brands, then you've got widespread research happening on a day-to-day basis, which will then give a far greater understanding around the impacts. And that will also say if there is MIPS within the helmet, then if there's a G-force measurement, you'll be able to say, okay, well, this impact was this high, but the MIPS mitigated it by X amount, and that
Mm-hmm.
rider hasn't suffered a concussion, so that's validated the application of using that. And then perhaps there's mass adoption of better helmets around that data. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're super excited. Super
Yeah,
excited to tackle that.
It is good. I mean, just touching on the better helmet subject. Obviously, I work at a bike park. I see all sorts of riders. Quite a lot of people in open face helmets, which is fine. You know, it's kind of your choice. You know, if people are feeling a bit burly, want to do the big senders, there'll be a lot more full face helmets. But even within that, there is a huge difference in what you can. I mean, a lot of it's down to budget. And budget helmets are a lot better than they used to be. When I look back at some of the stuff that I started with, it was, excuse me French, but it was fucking appalling, some of the stuff. Like, you look back at it, and there's a few helmets around that I see a lot of the younger riders in. I'm not going to name names, but there's a certain full face helmet that's available from I think you can get it at Halfords as well as other places, but the chin guard on it is ridiculous. The actual helmet itself, I wouldn't put my child in it, certainly when there's better ones on the shelf for not a lot more money. And it does pay me to see kids on decent bikes, you know, whatever bike you're on, that's all good, whatever you can afford. But then with let's just say, a lower end helmet, I'd rather see them on a snot box bike and spend the money on a better bit of kit on their head. And I suppose long term with HIT, it's going to, obviously, we get trickle down technology through everything, components and protection. It'd be nice to see what could potentially be happening with HIT and research into helmet technology, start getting the good stuff down to lower price points so it's actually available for everybody, certainly the younger riders.
Yeah, I mean, as a parent myself, once my kids are at the age of, going out and riding more aggressively and things like that, it's going to give me the peace of mind knowing, well, in real time, okay, say I missed the crash, I'm looking the other direction, I missed the crash, and they say they're fine, but if I've got this validation that, okay, he's just really genuinely smashed his head, okay, now I've got knowledge and the information to act accordingly. I might take him to the medical center anyway, but, that's going to give me, the validation as a parent. Okay, now I can manage you. Even if we don't go to A&E, we can manage you over the next couple of weeks and just keep you off your bike for a few days. So, I'm excited for the applications for parents. For sure, being a dad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a parent too. I've got an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old. Both of their helmets, I was pretty choosy over. And I think a lot of, I don't think necessarily when kids are getting into biking, I don't think a lot of parents are necessarily aware of what potentially can happen. They're like, oh, they're on a bike, they should wear a helmet. I don't think they're quite as aware of the exact reasons and potential reasons why they need a proper helmet on. And not just talking about like full face and sort of downhill, even just your average, Joe going for a trail ride in the woods at the weekend. Sticking a polystyrene piss pot on your head is not it's not the way forward. It's kind of going back to the attitude shift again. I'm hoping that obviously with the things like this becoming more prevalent and more talked about, it'd be nice to see just better stuff from people's heads, really.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we don't blink an eyelid and spending huge amounts of money on bikes, and then a smaller, less expensive piece of kit to take care of the number one asset in your body, which is your brain. If you don't have your brain, you've got nothing. You can't ride a bike.
No.
So, I mean, we hope that we can, help more riders, more parents, cross sports, and really give value around head injuries and head impacts.
Yeah. You said you had other sports as well, MotoGP and motocross specifically. Obviously, you've got quite a lot of top end involvement in the mountain bike world. What sort of interest have you had from those other areas?
Yeah, so we've made loads of contacts across motocross. Nothing sort of official like the hit squad, because we're such a small team. You can
only stretch yourself so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can't talk to everybody. But that's obviously a goal as we grow, is to cross over sports, and gravity sports is a good fit at the moment. So, motocross is an exciting application as well. And the MotoGP contacts that reached out to us wanted us to build a specific device for them with a small team. As we grow, that's probably something we could work in. So they suggested communication between the head impact device and the consoles on the bikes themselves, or their teams, back in the pits and things. So we've got a little bit of that happening with the mountain biking the device now. So the team manager can track in real time, as the rider's coming down the hill, know exactly where he's been or crashed and where he suffered the impact, and they can track him in real time, because we've had cases before where a rider's gone down and no one on the course actually knows where he is.
No.
And it's sometimes a volunteer or a person from the crowd that's actually gone off to help him when that person may not have the skills to help.
No, I've had that issue just from marshalling local enduro races, where like someone's crashed and someone's given the wrong information. Like also in an enduro race, you've got multiple stages, and someone says, "Oh, someone's crashed on stage one." All the marshals are running around on stage one, going, "Where is it?" Whereas and it wasn't, it was on stage 3. Whereas if someone's got this hit thing, it's like we know exactly what's going on, and then someone who's got the knowledge and the skills to help them out properly, I guess, can just get there straight away rather than the faff. Yeah.
I was back in New Zealand at Crankworks at Rotorua, and a rider crashed within a couple of meters of me, and there was probably 20 odd spectators around that point, and I was like, everyone was looking at each other, like no one wanted to go and make a mistake. But I went up and said, "Are you okay? You can sit out, or just sit up, bring your bike across to the side, take him out of the way in case another rider's come flying down." But he was definitely dazed, and if there had been an indication, we could have probably just taken him off the track and helped him immediately. Sometimes there's not that person there that knows what to do.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I mean, I even see it with like a busy weekend at the bike park. Someone crashes, and the mates are like, "Oh, you're right, mate," and they just sit there in the middle of the track. And there's riders now literally starting to, like, someone will go, "Stop," and you just got this kind of backing up of riders in some cases. I'm like, think about this, people. Your mate's clearly not in a good way. Let's just actually deal with this properly.
They'll be able to help that person immediately using the data from their phone. So, and then they'll be able to call someone straight away, as well as the emergency contacts, or within the companion app, you'll have the ability to have followers. So, there'll be, if there's a crash incident with a head impact, there'll be anyone within the area will be sent out a beacon or a notification that there's been a crash near that person. So, they can go down and help, or change their course and head over to another run where they'll be able to find that person. So, that's still like something we're working on in terms of solving that solution, but it's really exciting application, for sure, to give better care straight away.
Yeah, I know from speaking to, I did a recent episode with Luke and his dad Francis, because Francis has got a big MotoGP superbike racing background, and one of his really valid points certainly with the Downhill World Cup is that as a global series, it varies round to round and the venue to venue what kind of medical support systems are in place. I mean, the example I use of it not really being the best was when Brooke McDonald broke his back out in Mont Saint Anne a few years back, and it was all a bit of let's just say it was a less than polished performance from all the professionals involved. It feels like HIT could actually be a very useful part of that, of maybe because Francis is view is that if a venue's holding like a MotoGP race, they've got to have X, Y, Z in place from a medical point of view. Whereas with the mountain bike side of it, that's just not that. Where it feels like with the hit thing, that could potentially be a part of almost being part of like the standard package of like rider protection and medical backup for
for sure.
dealing with stuff and keeping it there.
Yeah, there's like definitely a use case for governing bodies. We have been talking to a few across sports about the duty of care to athletes and to riders, not just professional, but even in the smaller races, and potentially mandating a device like this, so that there is that level of care, and the governing body's not shying away from, the impact of head injuries. I think there's definitely room there, and some of the governing bodies we've been talking to are really excited about using it for that. So, you never know, the changes in mountain biking and attitudes shift. You might see the fact that every rider has to wear one of these devices. So, I mean, they changed the rules for a lot of different equipment. You're allowed to wear this, you're allowed to wear that, you're allowed to use this, that. So perhaps it's something in the future, and we'd love for that to happen, especially for head care and for everyone involved. But I mean, that's
obviously it'd be good for you just from a slightly cynical, just a commercial perspective. That would be a very good thing. But I think more importantly, just from an overall rider safety, and like you say, duty of care from governing bodies towards athletes, no matter what the sport is, be it, rugby, downhill, whatever.
You're right. There's there's a motivation for us commercially, and that's a great thing. But I think helping and giving more value is more of our sole driver, is making the sports safer around head impacts. So if we, like I said before, if we help one person, we've done a good thing, and if we help hundreds of thousands of people, then we're going to be riding that wave. And
that's one in the karma bank for sure.
Perhaps that will limit the amount of damage I've done to my own brain helping others.
So cause there is such a difference, like just globally, even like different national federations. Like I know, like the French races always seem to be a bit more strict on what you could. Where they were like, no, you must have a back protector, you must have X, Y, Z, and there's various kind of issues and incidents of riders kind of taking the mickey with that a little bit, just having literally like bubble wrap taped to their back and all sorts of stuff, because some riders don't like riding with loads of bulky body armor and stuff, even though these days it's a lot better than the old sort of hard shell stuff you used to wear back in the day. Because I think whereas a sensor that's either on the helmet or built into the helmet is so negligible in terms of how it feels to the rider, it seems like a no-brainer. That's a poor choice of words. Maybe correct. It feels like a no-brainer to have something like that fitted, because it's the device itself just seems completely unintrusive in how it is currently used and how it could be used in future stuff. It's like, why would you not, if you've got the option to run that, even if it does become mandatory, I don't think there's any excuse for not running something like this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, is that it's really easy to use. The riders don't notice it at all. Once you put it on, it's almost like set it and forget it, and it's an automatic policy that just runs in the background. It's not to detract from the performances or the mindset, and these guys, we don't want to be talking constantly about crashing around race weekends when they're at the peak of their performance. We just want it there so that should the unfortunate case, most of the riders won't crash, but they're nearly every weekend there is at least one. So the courses are tricky and designed to be tricky, but this is just that easy to use device that's sitting there in the background and just giving you that peace of mind and confidence to ride hard. So we're not wanting to slow them down at all. We want them to actually push harder and faster for themselves.
Just keep going. Yeah, it was an interesting one listening to Tani talk about. She had a crash at the test event at Lords. I think she obviously had a little bit of a head game with that going on because she knew at some point she was going to crash again, but she was so worried about that after the journey she's just been on with what happened to her. She sort of needed to get over that hurdle, and I guess sort of HIIT is a part of getting over that hurdle, I guess, in just dealing with it and giving her something to sit back on.
Yeah, so we'll be able to give her the indication that has happened with the Brain Collective and the top sort of riders. We'll be able to say, okay, well, then as they're recovering, we might do another scan or something like that. We could actually give them a validated improvement, even if they don't feel better, and then that obviously helps the brain recover in itself. That positive feedback loop that actually helps the brain recover. So, the Tani and that, they'll come back stronger riders. They might be slightly less risky, but I think they know they'll be able to set their own limits and know when to ride harder and when not to. Probably making them better riders overall. But it's good to see that she's back and riding. So after
I'm very excited for that because certainly the women's field this year, and certainly with the changes in the amount of riders in finals things, the women's field just the depth of talent is there. The pace seems to have just gone like up and up and quite a bit each year. But I just think, it's great to see the women's racing at the level that it's at now.
Yeah, mate,
and giving it a bit more support as well. Like, it's good.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, we've got loads of supporters in the women's and girls racing, and sometimes women and girls actually suffer more from head impacts. So there is some research around that. Not anything I can point to that's going to be exact or anything like that, but they do say that they suffer more than men do. But I mean, I'm excited to watch this year for sure. I mean, they ride much harder than I do. I'm like, wow.
I know. It's insane, isn't it? Like, and awesome. It's such a good because mountain biking is always at times has felt a little bit of just a sausage party, and I think having more of a rounded female influence on the sport, I think is only a good thing, and I'm super stoked for it. I mean, even just regionally, like where I am, there's just more female riders coming into the sport at all levels, and I think for the ones who are starting to get into the racing and stuff, I think like the HIIT as an add-on to that and helping build confidence and help deal with stuff, I think it's just another little part of the puzzle to making them want to stick at it and go faster. You raised a little interesting point, actually, going back to light recovery, saying with obviously with riders and how they're feeling in recovery, and you're saying about keeping in that kind of that positive feedback loop. Something I'm very bad at staying in. I'm definitely a bit of a glass half empty guy. So it's quite interesting to say that HIIT can then actually provide you can see when there's been improvement. Certainly if you've got riders who are using like the Queeg and getting sort of that side of it looked at, they can get some, even if they're not feeling like they're doing better, you can say, no, actually things are improvement. You just need to keep doing what you're doing. It's quite interesting to see how that can the whole kind of mental game up as well as literally like the physical symptoms, I guess.
Yeah, so within that and working with the Brain Collective, we hope to have a specific return to riding or a specific return to sport, whatever the sport is for that person. And they'll be able to go through the steps and then say if they do suffer symptoms, say they've got a 10-minute ride that day and they do suffer headaches afterwards, then they'll be able to come back to the previous step and then they go through the steps again and they might get a little bit further this time and then they're like, okay, well, then I got up to 30-minute ride and I was getting headaches again. So, or blurry vision, whatever the symptoms might be. And then they'll just go back a step and then you'll see that progression over time, that gradual rate of return and that progress, and that will be that positive feedback loop.
Cool. What are the sort of, in terms of that, what are the sort of symptoms that you're using as sort of recovery reference points, I guess? Yeah.
There's loads, and they vary from person to person. Obviously, the initial symptoms could be anything from vomiting, dizziness, headaches. Myself personally, I used to get blurry lines across my vision, so I could only see the shadows of people, the shadows of things. It was pretty scary. I thought I was going blind a couple of times.
Mm.
And then probably 30, 40 minutes after that, I was violently ill.
Yeah.
So there's nausea, just feeling sick. There's loads there. We've got a symptoms of concussion blog on our website to help people, so they can go through that, because there's loads that I've not mentioned here. But we're always putting out sort of education pieces to help parents and riders and athletes and everyone understand what's happened. Even if they're not using the device, they can understand and react accordingly.
Yeah, because there's even just in terms of like information that's available on the web, there's not even just like the NHS website. Kind of the information that's there is a little. It's probably just the bare essentials, I think. Whereas I think certainly with kind of the severity of head injuries that are possible with, like, just say, mountain biking, it's nice to have a bit more information available, which I guess your website is actually a really good resource for that. Just helping riders stay informed about where they are, even if, like you say, they haven't got the device. They've now got a reference book, if you like, from people who know, from having a big bank of data that you've collected from other incidences. They've got something better to refer to, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the NHS do a range of things, whereas we're very specific around head injuries. Like, we're not a registered medical device, so that must be made clear.
Yeah.
And that requires, years of clinical testing and things, which we're hoping to go down eventually. So perhaps it becomes a medical device in the future, as we grow, which will be really exciting. But yeah, the guidelines for, say, if you're looking online from the NHS are pretty slim. It's a more of a general sense, and often when you go into A&E, there's just an assumed concussion, and some of the doctors may not know as much as others. So yeah, if we can provide an educational piece with our top end doctors and professors and the guys doing research, then yeah, that's another win for us in terms of helping the community and helping the sports community.
I'm genuinely excited to see where this goes long term. Just because it just seems like it just feels like there's only positives with this, and it's a kind of a wonder that no one's done something similar before. Again, it's probably just going back to the attitude shift again. I think people are just a bit more aware and willing to talk about it, and the understanding seems to be there, and the willingness to learn from everyone, be it, riders, racers, helmet manufacturers, research bodies. It all feels like there's a lot more willingness to do things better when it comes to head injuries.
Yeah, I mean, definitely years ago, I mean, you see across sports like the NFL and things like that, they're actually starting now to have younger athletes wear, different type of helmets and things. So they're aware of the risks and the long-term impact on athletes. So they're actually making change. And I think maybe a few years ago, the device might have been too early, whereas now seems like the right time, because we've got, more people that have a better education. They've probably watched the concussion movie with Will Smith, and they're aware. So it seems like good timing for positive change.
It's good. I honestly can't wait to see where this goes. Like from the racing side of it, because I've been a proper little World Cup super fan since I was about 15, really. if it just makes all of that better and safer for the riders, and just like after big injuries, helping them get back to the sport quicker and making sure that it is actually the right time for them to come back. It gives them more. It's just giving people information, actual hard information to work with, rather than whatever we had before, which wasn't always a lot, I guess. It was just going on feeling, which is ridiculous because the feeling's coming from your brain, and that's the thing you've just given a good hiding to.
Yeah, I mean, the community, the downhill and mountain biking community have been awesome to work with, and they're really eager to give feedback. And the guys and girls using the device at the moment are always in touch, and they're saying, "Oh, can it do this? Can it do that? How do I use it for this application? What happens if this happens?" And we're just making the device better, which is the whole goal. And that valuable feedback from the riders and things now is so cool for what we could be able to achieve in the next couple of years.
It's good. It is really good. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. I've really enjoyed that chat. It's given me so much more kind of info on just everything about it, that something I wasn't expecting. But if people want to obviously find out more, I'll put all the links in the show description. What's the website address again? I think it's
we're at hitrecognition.co.uk. You can find us on Instagram at Head Impact. I should probably know this off by heart. Just find us all through our website. Most of the information is on our website, so there's a news and blog. You can sign up to our email list and get monthly updates. We've got a referral campaign coming up, so just quickly with the HIT Squad riders, a few of them will be at what we're going to call the HIT Summit. We're trying to get all of them together, but there'll be a competition for riders to win a place at the HIT Summit. So for them and 4 of their mates, they'll be able to ride with some of the world's best downhill riders. We're going to bring them to Scotland.
Nice.
And have a bit of fun. And yeah, it's an exciting prize. And we'll hopefully partner with guys like 6D and a few other brands to give a lot of merchandise away and HIT devices themselves. So, yeah, definitely join the email list if you're into that, or just keep an eye on our news feed, which you'll see it there.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Well, thanks again, Nick. And
thank you.
I'm gonna have to catch up with you guys again and think about a year's time just to see how things are progressing. Really, I'm very interested in this story as a whole and where it goes. Yeah, I do wish you guys all the best because it's all positive stuff. All positive stuff.
Thank you very much for having us, and we're excited as well. If you're ever up in Scotland, please come up and say hello.
Yeah, man. Whereabouts in Scotland are you guys?
We're based in Edinburgh, so
cool. Loads of riding on your doorstep. Yeah,
there's some amazing trails. I'm only just learning now, so
good stuff. All right, Nick. Thanks for that.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Mark, and take it easy.
Cheers, man.
Okay, cheers.
So there we have it. Huge thanks to Nick for taking some time to chat with me on that one. I found that one super interesting. There was so much in that, and really exciting to see where this is going to go and how it's going to help the future of the sport as a whole. If you'd like to support Gromcast, I will put links in the show description, but there is a GoFundMe, so if you do want to ship in anything you can, everything that you do donate, literally all of it goes straight back into this podcast, equipment, various recording package cost fees. I want to make this better, and I just need a little bit of help to do it. Things are tight at the moment, and I know it's tight for everyone, but anything you can donate would be hugely appreciated. Until next time, folks. See you later.
Gromcast.